Welcome. Are you ready for your 10-minute fiction vacay? Do you need a little break from work or a little pick-me-up? Stay tuned. My name is Marie Leclerc, and I'll be reading chapter 8 from my novel, The Last Yard Sale. You can get it free from Amazon and from other booksellers. Chapter 8 tells us a little more about Marybeth's story. I hope you enjoy it. Chapter 8. She looked at the clock. 2 a.m. She punched the pillow and rolled over. 2:25 a.m. Damn. She grabbed the covers tighter around her. 3:05 a.m. She threw the pillow at the clock and groaned. Tired and grumpy, she got up with a growl. Instead of staring at the clock, she figured she might as well get up and do something productive until the elusive Sandman came by again. Turning the light on in the living room, she looked around. So, now what? Not surprising, the box was the first thing to pop into her mind. She headed to the garage, grumbling under her breath, and brought the box into the living room without incident. She set it on the floor near the couch. The music box rested on the top. It was lightly wrapped in tissue paper, with the heads of the wedding couple poking out the top. She didn't really want to deal with this. How many times do I have to hash this out? She asked the couple, shaking her head. The result is always the same. Somehow, she knew she had to do it anyway. Okay, okay. She was almost yelling, irritated with the imagined response of the porcelain participants. Ripping the scab off yet again. With a slight tremor, she reached down and touched the music box. Nothing happened. She unwrapped it and set it on the coffee table. She stared at it. They stared back at her. The couple dancing, all smiles and joyful. What are you staring at? She asked them. She half expected a response. Nothing unusual happened. There they stood, staring back at her. She waited. Nothing. Maybe she needed to do something like meditate or chant. Or maybe there was a magic word. Abracadabra, she said, waving her fingers like a magician. Still nothing. She remembered the song that had played when she first picked it up. It was the song she and Eric had danced to at their wedding, A Kiss to Build a Dream On, by Louis Armstrong. As she thought about it now, it seemed a bit ironic. She had indeed built a rather large dream, fantasy even, on something as fleeting as a kiss. She knew getting married was her own fault. After all, there'd been warning signs and things that were not right. Even up to the week of their wedding, she was having quiet doubts. But it seemed impossible to back out by then. Irresponsible, over-emotional, irrational wedding nerves. She used all manner of denial to get through the day. It seemed ridiculous now, but the biggest pressure of all was that she didn't want to look silly or be embarrassed in front of family and friends. Really? Who gets married to avoid being embarrassed? Although she took responsibility for getting married in the first place, she quickly assigned blame for everything else to Eric. Her fault, she determined, was her desire to believe in a man and the fantasy, ignoring those parts of reality that didn't fit the picture. Eric kept her fantasy alive for years with unfulfilled promises. She shifted her attention to the music box. She knew the key to this item's story was in the music. Fighting off all her survival instincts, she wound it up. Just before she released the key, she noticed the clock, exactly 3:20 a.m. She set it down on the coffee table and let the music begin. As she started listening to the familiar song, her head started to spin, slowly at first, then picking up speed. Here we go again, she thought. The next instant, she was deposited in an unfamiliar apartment. She heard voices, a man and a woman, drunkenly exchanging insults. Then the scene came into focus. She found herself in the corner of a living room watching two adults argue. Gratefully, they seemed oblivious to her. The scene itself, however, was escalating quickly in both volume and hostility. The man threw an empty beer can against the wall and bellowed, "Eric, Eric, get your stupid ass in here and help your mother. She's fallen down drunk again." Marybeth found this to be an odd observation from a man who was only marginally better off himself. Suddenly, she knew where she was. This was the childhood home of her ex-husband. A tiny Eric peeked around the corner, 8 years old and scared, really scared. He slunk into the room, trying without success to go unnoticed. Eric's father continued his verbal tirade in the drawl of the inebriated, shouting insults at both Eric and his mother. Eric, little as he was, helped his mother to the back room, presumably the bedroom, while Dad flopped down on the couch to finish his beer. Then the scene changed, and Marybeth was at a school gymnasium watching a basketball game. She could see Eric on the court and hear Eric's drunken dad in the stands yelling insults at him. "What's wrong with you? You should have had that." Marybeth recognized the drunken brawl from the previous scene. "I don't know why the coach even lets you play." A couple of the other parents tried to quiet him, but to no avail. Eventually, everyone moved away from him on the bleachers. Then, to Eric's horror, the police came and escorted him out of the building. But Eric's dad didn't go quietly. He screamed obscenities all the way out. Eric stood on the court, paralyzed. All the color drained from his face. Eric said he had no friends at school, but he hadn't said why. No friends outside of school either, unless you counted the kids down the block that he had started to drink with. Then the scene began to change again. "No more," Marybeth pleaded, to whom she wasn't sure, but the visions were not over. She saw Eric as a young man of 24 or so. He was drunk and getting into his car with a young woman. Marybeth held her breath and braced herself. Although she didn't know this part of Eric's life, she certainly could guess this was not going to end well. There was a brief argument about who would drive. The woman seemed to be less intoxicated than Eric, but Eric refused to yield the keys. She watched as the young woman, about Eric's age, got into the passenger side of the car. Off they drove into a dark, rainy night. Marybeth was horrified as she watched the crash that killed the young woman. Then she was whisked back through time and space to the living room, exactly where she started, breathing heavily, her pulse racing, just in time to hear the last few jingles of the music box. "God, please, no more of that," she said aloud to a God she wasn't sure was listening. She looked up at the clock over the fireplace. 3:20 a.m. Surely that can't be. The visions seemed to go on forever. She left the music box on the coffee table, got up, and poured herself a glass of wine to calm her nerves. Her pulse began to slow, but her heart was heavy as she recalled the scenes of Eric's life. She knew some of his history, but until this moment, she hadn't really understood the pain he grew up with. Eric's family stories had been vague, lacking detail. Even with just these three scenes, she began to weave together a picture of Eric's life she had not imagined before. No wonder he was estranged from his family. His mother died years earlier from a presumed accidental overdose of alcohol and pills. His father had a studio apartment over someone's garage in Philadelphia, and his sister lived in Maine somewhere. He saw his father rarely, and his sister not at all, not even a Christmas card. Marybeth thought about Eric's bad behavior during their marriage and all the earnest conversations they'd had about making positive changes. Eric made great promises, but never managed to pull it together for any length of time. He reluctantly stopped drinking when they started the fertility treatments, but she always felt he resented her for that. When he started overspending, it felt like he was getting back at her somehow. She eventually got tired of arguing about it and began a regular practice of purging the house of unnecessary items. Her regular donations to the local shelter had started back then in an effort to clutter control. For the second time in as many days, she found herself piecing new information into the story of her life, forcing her to change the well-established picture she'd held onto for years. She thought about their failure to conceive a child and wondered what kind of father Eric would have been. Did he ever worry he would become like his own father? Maybe there had been some divine intervention there after all. If there was such a being, micromanaging the lives of humans, he was doing a bang-up job, she thought bitterly. And what about her own past? She was starting to understand how Eric's past was always part of their marriage, but how much was true for her as well? Was she really still angry at her parents for the divorce? She hadn't ever thought about it. She never was a deep thinker, though. That was Regina's department, but it was starting to seem important. She thought about the strange yard sale. Who was that woman? And what was the point? Why would an old woman care about Marybeth's life? The second glass of wine was kicking in, and she could see the Sandman in the distance. She grabbed the fuzzy throw she kept on the back of the couch, curled up, and fell asleep. And we are at the end of chapter 8. I'm happy you stayed with me. I hope you're feeling better than when we started. Sometimes all it takes is a little vacay in the middle of the day. If you're wanting a little more of the story, check out the playlist for the last yard sale by chapter. And there are a lot of other stories here on my channel to listen to. Or you can check out my website, marie-leclaire.com. You can find my novels directly on Amazon too. The links are in the description below. And please like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss anything in the future. See you at the next vacay. I wonder where that will be.